Do you know what the wilderness sounds like when there's no wind? Not quiet, not empty. It sounds expectant. Most people think danger announces itself. A scream, a crash, something dramatic enough to justify fear. But the worst nights don't do that. They let you settle in. They let you believe the rules are enough. They let you think the lights you see are just hikers, or snowmobiles, or reflections you haven't learned yet. If you've ever stood alone somewhere high and remote and felt watched without seeing anything, this is for you. If you've ever trusted a map more than your instincts, this is for you. And if you've ever broken a rule because you thought someone needed help, stay with me. I need you to understand why some rules don't exist to protect you. They exist to slow what's already learned how you think. My name is Daniel H. Mercer. I am a seasonal fire lookout and winter infrastructure monitor assigned to the Crater Lake National Park South Rim sector. I've been with the Forest Service and interagency partners for 14 years. 7 of those were full-time. The rest were contract winters, because there are fewer people willing to stay when the roads close and the radios go quiet. Crater Lake in winter is not a park. It's a containment zone with brochures. The caldera walls rise nearly 2,000 feet from the lake surface. Snowpack averages 12 to 15 feet by January. Access roads are gated and buried. There are no casual visitors. No hikers who got turned around. Anyone up there in winter is either permitted, lost in a way that already killed them, or not supposed to be there at all. I was stationed at Watchtower Delta, decommissioned officially, unofficially reactivated every winter since 2009 because the automated systems don't log what we need logged. They never have. The job title on paper is Fire Lookout. The job in practice is Observer, Recorder, and, when necessary, Denier. There are rules for that job that don't exist in any manual. They are passed verbally, quietly, usually after someone doesn't come back. Within my first week that winter, I logged the first light that didn't match the maps. I didn't know that was what it was yet. I only knew it was wrong. But before I get there, you need to understand the rules. And you need to understand why breaking them gets people killed even when you're doing it for the right reasons. I'm telling you this because in 2017, Ranger First Class Olivia Reyes died on the North Caldera Trail at mile marker 3.2 after responding to what she believed was a stranded snowshoer signaling with a headlamp. She broke Rule 3. She left the marked perimeter at night. They found her radio 2 days later, still transmitting. No body was recovered. That was not an accident, and it was not wildlife. Rule 1 is simple. Do not respond to lights you did not log first, not track, not investigate, not wave back. Log first, always, because lights at Crater Lake do not mean people. Rule 2. Never acknowledge a light with your own light. No flashlights. No headlamps. No tower beacon overrides. Light is treated as confirmation. Rule 3. No night movement outside marked zones. Not for voices. Not for distress calls. Not for children crying. Not for names you recognize. Especially not for names you recognize. Rule 4. If a light appears on the lake surface in winter, you do not look at it directly. You note the time. You note the color. You look away. Rule 5. If the radio asks you to confirm your location, you confirm using grid coordinates only. Never landmarks. Never personal references. There are more. There are always more. But those are the ones that matter early. The winter I logged 31 nights of unmapped lights started quietly. It always does. December came in heavy. Snow buried the south access road by the second week. Plows stopped. I skied the last mile in with a supply sled and locked myself into a tower that wasn't supposed to be staffed. That's another thing you should know. Officially, no one was there. The reports reflect that. The first light appeared on December 11th at 1942 hours. White. Steady. Approximately 3 degrees east of Wizard Island. Well below the rim line. Too low to be a tower. Too fixed to be a snowmobile. Too clean to be a reflection. I logged it. I did not respond. It disappeared after 11 minutes. That night, the radio crackled once at 2:13. No voice. Just a carrier signal. Then silence. That happens sometimes. Equipment shifts in cold. I slept. By the third night, the lights returned. 2 this time. 1 amber. 1 white. They did not move together. They did not follow terrain. They stayed where no trail existed. I logged them. By the 5th night, the radio asked me to confirm my location. That should not have happened. Delta Tower, the voice said. Calm. Professional. Male. Familiar in the way standardized voices are familiar. Confirm visual anomaly at grid 7-4. Grid 7-4 is not a valid designation. I replied with my coordinates only. As trained. The radio did not acknowledge. On the 6th night, I heard my daughter's name. Not over the radio. Outside. Emma was 9 that winter. She was in Bend with her mother. She had never been to Crater Lake. She had never seen snow like that. She did not know the word caldera. Her voice came from below the tower, thin and cold and wrong. "Dad," it said. Rule 3 exists because of voices. I did not move. I did not answer. I logged the sound as auditory anomaly concurrent with visual light event. The light that night was blue. Blue does not occur naturally in headlamps. On December 18th, maintenance tech Harold Pike broke Rule 2. Harold had been doing winter checks longer than I'd been alive. He believed experience was protection. He waved his flashlight twice at an amber light near the Cleetwood Cove drop. He called it in laughing. "Probably some idiot kid with a drone," he said. The light waved back. Not mimicked. Not mirrored. Responded. 2 slow arcs. Deliberate. Harold's laughter stopped. The radio went open channel. Breathing. Fast. Then slow. Then nothing. We found his tracks in the morning. They ended at a ploughed marker. Perfectly. As if he had stepped off the world. No drag marks. No blood. No collapse site. Just absence. That was the first death that winter. It did not make the news. It never does. By Christmas, the lights were nightly. They changed colors. White, amber, blue, once red, but only when fog rolled in off the lake, thick enough to erase the rim. I stopped sleeping more than 2 hours at a time. The logs grew heavier. Times, angles, durations, correlations. Patterns emerged that I was not supposed to see. The lights respected boundaries. They never crossed the old caldera maintenance road, even when buried, even when invisible. They never rose above a certain elevation, always below the tree line, always below where Watchtower Delta could see without binoculars. That was the limitation. It took us years to understand it, but I saw it that winter. They could not ascend past human-built lines unless invited, and lights are invitations. On December 27th, the rule that hurt people when followed correctly came into play. Rule 7. If you log 3 consecutive nights of stationary lights within the same grid, you initiate remote observation protocol and do not escalate. No response. No relocation. No reinforcement. Delay. Containment through inaction. I followed it. On the 3rd night, the light changed shape. Not brightness. Shape. It elongated, narrowed, resolved into something vertical. I thought of a person standing very still in deep snow. The radio came alive at 23:58. "Daniel," it said. No call sign, no grid request, just my name. I should have shut it off. Instead, I listened. "Your daughter's cold," the voice said. "She keeps asking why you won't turn the light on." I vomited into a trash bag and logged the transmission as unauthorized vocalization. That is what professionalism looks like at altitude. On New Year's Eve, the lights came closer. Not physically, geometrically. They aligned. 3 points. Equidistant. Below the rim. Above the lake. Wrong in a way that made my teeth ache. I called Supervisor Allen on a secure line and told him the logs exceeded tolerance. He told me to keep logging. "Systems are under review," he said. "We don't have authorization to escalate." Systemic failure doesn't announce itself either. It just stops answering when you need it. January brought the storm that cut power to Delta Tower for 6 hours. Backup generators kicked in late. In the dark, the lights were brighter. They pulsed, in rhythm, like breathing. On January 12th, I broke Rule 4. I looked directly at a light on the lake surface. It was not reflected. It was under the ice, moving, slowly, tracing the caldera wall from below, following the road that no longer existed. The radio spoke in my wife's voice that night. She used my middle name. That is not public information. I stayed, because the rules say you stay, because leaving makes things worse, because if no one logs the lights, they don't stop appearing. They just stop being counted. By the end of January, the logs filled 3 binders. 31 nights. Every light accounted for. Every violation noted. Every name used against me recorded. This is where the job stops being about observation and starts being about endurance. And this is where I need you to understand something clearly. Whatever is down there does not want the forest. It wants the systems we build inside it. And winter is when the systems are weakest. February stripped away any illusion that what we were doing counted as control. The lights didn't increase in number. That would have been easier to explain, easier to justify escalation. They stayed consistent, predictable, almost polite. What changed was how they were used. I need to clarify something about Crater Lake in winter that most people don't understand. The park doesn't close because it's empty. It closes because it's fragile. Every structure, every buried road, every repeater and weather station exists in a narrow band of tolerance. Once you cross that band, help doesn't arrive. It disappears. February is when that margin collapses. Snow load took out the North Rim relay on the 3rd. Radios degraded to line of sight only. Satellite pings lagged. The automated cameras, already unreliable, began flagging false positives and then stopped flagging anything at all. Officially, this was logged as seasonal degradation. Unofficially, we lost eyes. That's when the lights began to reposition in ways that mattered. They stopped appearing where they had been logged before. Instead, they appeared near infrastructure, near snow gates, near buried maintenance hatches, near the emergency cache at VD Falls that only rangers know exists. They were learning the map we pretended didn't matter anymore. On February 6th, I received a voice transmission that did not come through any known channel. It came through the tower intercom. That system isn't networked. It's hardwired, analog, designed in the 1970s and barely touched since. "Fire lookout Mercer," the voice said. Female. Flat. Not mimicking anyone I knew. "We see you." That was new. Up until then, the voices had always been imitative, familiar, leveraging attachment. This was different, declarative. I logged it. Then I unplugged the intercom and sat in the dark for 20 minutes with my gloves on, because I couldn't stop my hands from shaking. Rule 8 exists because of what happened next. Rule 8 says that when systems speak out of channel, you do not answer even to deny. Silence is not neutrality. It is a boundary. At 1:17, the lights formed a line, not a path. A boundary, parallel to the old South Service Road, exactly where the elevation rises enough to support heavy equipment in summer. They were marking something. On February 9th, I was ordered to receive a relief ranger. Her name was Sarah Lynn, 26. Provisional appointment. Second winter assignment. Smart. Overconfident in the way people are when they haven't been punished yet. The order came from Regional, not Allen. That should have raised alarms, but by then alarms were just noise. Sarah skied in at dusk. I met her at the perimeter marker. I followed Rule 2. No lights. No wave. I identified myself by voice only. She laughed about it later, said I looked like a ghost. She hadn't been briefed. That's another unofficial rule. You don't brief newcomers until they've been inside for at least 12 hours. Exposure without context causes panic. Panic causes movement. Movement gets noticed. We ate canned chili in silence while the wind pressed against the tower like something trying to remember its way in. At 22:04, the lights appeared. 3 white, 1 amber. Sarah stood up too fast and went to the window. "Those aren't on my map," she said. "No," I told her. "They aren't." She reached for her headlamp. I caught her wrist hard enough to leave a bruise. Rule 2 is not gentle. She stared at me, angry, confused. "You don't use lights," I said. "Ever. Not for them." "For who?" she asked. I didn't answer. That was my first failure of compassion that winter. Not explaining. Letting fear stand in for authority. The radio crackled. "Sarah," it said. Her name. Clean. Familiar. She froze. "That's not possible," she whispered. I didn't. I shut the radio off. She didn't fight me. She just sat there, breathing too fast, staring at the window like it might say her name next. At 2:30, one of the white lights blinked twice. Sarah flinched. "That's Morse," she said automatically. "That's..." "It isn't," I said. The blink repeated. "Two short. One long." She stood up again. "I have to check," she said. "If someone's out there." Rule 3. I blocked the door. She pushed past me. I grabbed her pack. She started crying. "I can hear my brother," she said. "He used to tap like that on the wall when we were kids. He died 3 years ago. I know he's dead. But that's his signal." This is how it happens. Not arrogance. Memory. Attachment. Duty twisted into obligation. I did something I will never be forgiven for. I restrained her. I locked her into the sleeping alcove and killed the power to the door release. She screamed my name until her voice broke. Outside, the amber light brightened. It did not approach. It waited. At dawn, Sarah did not look at me. She did not speak. She logged the lights with perfect handwriting and asked for transfer papers by noon. She left 2 days later under escort. She never returned to service. That night, the lights appeared closer to the tower than they ever had before. Not closer in distance. Closer in relevance. They aligned beneath the emergency evacuation route. On February 14th, Supervisor Allen broke Rule 1. He called me on an open channel and asked me to confirm visual contact with a blue light near the Rim Village substation. I hesitated. "I can't confirm without logging," I said. "Just tell me if you see it," he said. "We have pressure. Media inquiries. Someone's kid went missing near Fort Klamath and they're asking about aerial visibility." Compassion again. Always compassion. I looked. I answered. "Yes," I said. "I see it." The light changed color. Alan screamed. The line went dead. 2 days later, a recovery team found Alan's snowmobile intact near the Rim Village gate. Engine warm. Tracks circling. No sign of him. The report listed hypothermia and disorientation. I know better. By mid-February, the entity stopped mimicking voices of loved ones. It started using procedures. Call signs. Shift schedules. It quoted excerpts from training manuals that were not publicly accessible. It asked for confirmation of protocols that did not exist. It was testing us. Seeing which rules were real. Seeing which were enforced. On February 19th, I violated Rule 7 again. 3 consecutive nights of stationary lights. Remote observation protocol. Do nothing. But that night, one of the lights flickered out of sequence. It failed. That had never happened before. Failure implies effort. I logged the anomaly and added a note I was not authorized to add. Pattern deviation suggests response to internal stressor. That note was redacted in the official copy. I still have the original. On February 21st, the lights spelled something. Not letters. Coordinates. My coordinates. I shut down all non-essential systems and sat on the floor with my back against the tower wall, counting my breaths. The radio activated anyway. "Daniel," it said, in my voice this time. "Perfect. Exhausted. Familiar. You're doing very well. You can rest now." I laughed. It sounded like a sob. I realized then that the limitation mattered more than the rules. They could not ascend. They could not cross certain lines. But they could make us invite them. Lights. Names. Confirmation. February ended with a containment failure that was never acknowledged. A snowcat operator named Luis Moreno responded to a distress beacon that activated without registration. He followed procedure. He followed duty. The beacon was alight. He crossed the old service road boundary. The lights followed. They did not cross it. They didn't need to anymore. March was coming. And with it, the thaw. March does something to people who've been isolated too long. It convinces them that survival means movement. The snow softens. The wind shifts. The days lengthen by minutes you can feel in your bones. Systems begin to wake up just enough to suggest help is possible again. That's when most of the damage happens. By March 3rd, the south access road was still impassable, but the melt had exposed the old service markers. Orange fiberglass poles, bent and scarred, half swallowed by drifts. Boundaries made visible again. The lights respected them. That should have been reassuring. Instead, it made the behavior intentional in a way I couldn't explain away anymore. I was alone again. Sarah's transfer paperwork had gone through with unusual speed. That should have told me something about institutional memory. How quickly people are removed once they've seen too much but not enough to be useful. The tower creaked constantly now. Expansion and contraction. Metal complaining. Every sound felt like a footstep. On March 5th, the first daylight light appeared. That's not a typo. It was 10:14 in the morning. Full sun. Visibility nearly 10 miles. A pale white point flickered just below the rim, hovering where the caldera wall drops sharply toward the lake. It did not cast shadow. It did not wash out. It waited to see if I would dismiss it. Rule 9 exists because daylight makes people sloppy. Rule 9 says that if a light appears when it shouldn't, you log it twice. Once as observed. Once as intentional. I logged it. Then I logged it again. At 11:02, the weather station at Vidi Falls came back online and immediately began reporting impossible data. Temperature inversions that contradicted physical placement. Wind vectors pointing inward from all directions. As if the crater itself were inhaling. I forwarded the data upstream. No response. That afternoon, I received a recorded message stamped as pre-approved guidance from Regional Command. It was generic. Vague. Reassuring. Anomalous visual phenomena during seasonal transitions are not uncommon. Continue observation. Avoid speculative language. Speculative language. That's what they call patterns. Once acknowledging them would require action. At 16:40, I saw a light move uphill for the first time. Not cross the elevation line. Approach it. Stop. Hover. Then withdraw. Testing. The limitation was still intact. For now. On March 7th, my wife called. That should not have been possible. Cell coverage doesn't reach the tower. Even in summer. Even with clear skies. I stared at the phone until it stopped vibrating. Then it rang again. I answered on the third ring, because part of me needed to know whether it would still sound like her. It did. She asked why I hadn't called Emma back. She said Emma was crying. Said she'd had a nightmare about lights under ice. I closed my eyes and leaned my forehead against the cold glass of the observation window. I could see them already. Even before dusk. Dim, patient. I'm fine, I said. I'll call later. You sound tired, she said. Are you safe? That question has no honest answer in my line of work. Yes, I said. That night, the lights pulsed in pairs. One on. One off. A conversation. I dreamed of maps that rearranged themselves when I wasn't looking. On March 9th, the park superintendent visited. That never happens in winter. His name was Thomas Keane. Political appointment. 6 months in position. Hadn't seen snow like this before. He arrived by helicopter mid-morning, the downdraft flattening the drifts and scattering powder into the trees. The lights vanished the moment the blades cut the air. He smiled too much. Shook my hand too firmly. I appreciate you keeping things running, he said. We're under a lot of scrutiny right now. He didn't ask to see the logs. He asked about liability. I told him about the lights. I told him about the rules. I told him about Alan. He listened politely and nodded in places where nodding meant nothing. Are you saying there's a security threat? He asked. I'm saying there's something that responds to acknowledgement, I said. And we've been training people to give it exactly that. He sighed, looked out the window. Daniel, he said, this park runs on perception. If there were something like that, we'd have records. I showed him the binders. He flipped through 3 pages and closed them. This is observational drift, he said. Isolation does that. We'll get you relief once the road opens. When the road opens, I said, the rules won't hold. He didn't ask what I meant. Before he left, he stood on the tower deck and raised his phone to take a picture of the lake. I slapped it out of his hand. It skidded across the boards and stopped inches from the edge. He stared at me. You do not use lights, I said. Not here. He filed a formal complaint. At dusk, the lights returned. Closer than before. Not crossing. Waiting. On March 11th, the first child's voice was used. Not Emma's. A boy. Maybe 8. Laughing. Can you see me? It called from below the rim. I'm right here. I shut down the external speakers. The laughter continued anyway. I logged it as juvenile vocal mimicry. That language is deliberate. Clinical. Distancing. If you call it a child, you move. If you call it mimicry, you stay. On March 13th, the weather shifted abruptly. Warm rain. Heavy. The kind that eats snow from the inside. Avalanche risk spiked. Trails destabilized. The lights moved again. They repositioned to where meltwater carved channels through the drifts. Natural paths. Human paths. I realized then that they weren't learning geography. They were learning behavior. Where people would go when things went wrong. At 21:30, the radio crackled with a distress call. This one was real. Ranger Miguel Torres. South Rim Patrol. He'd stayed late securing signage before the thaw. A tree had come down across the service road behind him. He was trapped between markers. I can see something, he said. There's a light down by the switchback. I think someone's hurt. My stomach dropped. Miguel, I said, do not approach it. Stay where you are. It's moving, he said. It's waving. Do not wave back. There was a pause. I hear my mother, he said quietly. She's calling my name. This is the moment the rules are tested against the people they were designed to protect. Miguel was 23. First year. He'd lost his mother the year before. I closed my eyes. Miguel, I said, listen to me. That is not her. You need to stay put. Help is coming. Help was not coming. The snowcat was grounded. The helicopter was gone. The road was hours from clearance. I can't just stand here, he said. What if it's a kid? Compassion. Always compassion. I broke Rule 10. Rule 10 says you never give procedural advice during an active light event. I told him to retreat uphill. To cross the marker. To do the thing the lights couldn't do themselves. I heard him breathing hard. Slipping. Cursing. Then silence. The radio stayed open. A new voice came through. Thank you for your cooperation, it said. Calm. Neutral. Almost kind. This interaction has been logged. I screamed then. I don't remember standing up. I don't remember throwing the chair. I remember the sound my throat made and how small it was. Miguel's body was never recovered. The report cited avalanche. March 15th marked the first time the lights appeared above the old service road boundary. Just barely. A foot. Maybe 2. Enough. The limitation was eroding. Or being worked around. On March 17th, I found fresh footprints beneath the tower. Barefoot. Child-sized. They circled the structure once and stopped directly below my sleeping alcove. They did not ascend. They did not need to. I did not sleep again. By March 20th, enforcement fatigue had set in. The rules felt thin. Arbitrary. Like habits instead of safeguards. The lights felt closer even when they weren't. I started whispering the rules to myself at night. Out loud. Like prayers. Rule 1. Rule 2. Rule 3. Names give permission. Lights invite. Silence delays. On March 22nd, the radio asked me to confirm my location again. Grid 7-4. I did not answer. It asked again. I unplugged it. The lights pulsed brighter. They spelled my name in intervals only I could recognize. I realized then that this wasn't about breach. It was about where. About how long a system could hold when every safeguard required someone to choose it, again and again, under pressure. March ended with a directive from regional. Prepare for seasonal transition. Resume standard protocols. Standard. As if anything about this had ever been standard. April was coming. And the lights were no longer waiting. April begins with the sound of water moving where it shouldn't. Not rushing. Not flooding. Just the constant, soft noise of melt finding paths that haven't been used in decades. Beneath snowpack. Beneath roads that only exist on outdated maps. Beneath rules that assumed winter would always buy us time. By April 2nd, the South Access Road was officially reopened to authorized vehicles only. Unofficially, it was open to anything that knew where the weak points were. The lights didn't celebrate the change. They didn't surge or scatter. They reorganized. That's the part that still wakes me up. I had expected hunger. What I saw instead was discipline. The first convoy came up on April 4th. 2 maintenance trucks. 1 Ranger SUV. 3 people I knew well enough to trust with my life and not well enough to save from what was waiting. Their headlights cut through the trees like permission slips. I radioed ahead. Lights active, I said. Do not deviate from marked road. Do not exit vehicles after dark. They acknowledged. Professional. Calm. They parked at Rim Village before dusk and began routine checks like this was any other spring. The lights appeared the moment the engines shut off. 5 of them. White. Stationary. Equidistant. Surrounding the parking area but not crossing into it. As if respecting a fence only they could see. I called it in. Regional acknowledged receipt and told me to continue observation. This is where institutional minimization becomes lethal. When something doesn't escalate the way fear expects, people stop respecting it. At 21:18, Ranger Cooper stepped out of his vehicle to smoke. He flicked his lighter. Rule 2. A single flame. Brief. Enough. One of the lights shifted. Just slightly. Not toward him. Toward the road behind him. Get back in the vehicle, I said over the radio. What? He said. I don't see. The light blinked. Once. His lighter went out. He laughed. That laugh ended abruptly, like someone had put a hand over his mouth. The radio picked up a sound like fabric tearing. Then static. They found his jacket in the morning, folded neatly on the hood of the SUV. The cigarette was still inside the pocket. Unlit. After that, the lights began appearing during authorized operations only. They stopped manifesting when no one was around. They conserved themselves. On April 6th, the incomplete rule finally broke something important. Rule 11. Rule 11 says that if the lights appear to retreat when observed by multiple witnesses, you mark the area as temporarily safe. That rule was added after a cluster of sightings in the early 2000s that coincided with nothing bad happening. Correlation masquerading as cause. On April 6th, 3 maintenance staff and 1 biologist watched the lights fade simultaneously near the Cleetwood Cove junction. They marked the zone safe. They proceeded. That night, the lights reappeared behind them. Not ahead. Behind. The biologist, a woman named Karen Holt, was last seen on thermal moving upslope where no trail existed. Her final transmission was calm. Almost relieved. "I think I see my dad," she said. "He told me to follow the light." Her father had been dead for 15 years. That rule was never officially revoked. It's still in circulation. Passed verbally. Because admitting it was wrong would require admitting how many times it got people killed. By April 8th, the thaw exposed the old trailheads. Maps resurfaced. Visitors followed them. The first civilian exposure happened at 1432 on April 9th. A family from Medford. Parents. 2 kids. They stayed inside the marked overlook until the youngest dropped his glove over the barrier. He pointed. A blue light flickered below. "Look," he said. "It's catching it." The father leaned forward. The light moved. The glove did not come back. The ranger on duty ushered them away and filed an incident report about wind. The child cried for hours. That night, the lights pulsed in patterns I recognized. They were practicing with smaller stakes now. Training. On April 11th, my wife drove up. I did not ask her to. I did not tell her not to. I knew she was coming the moment the radio went quiet in a way that meant the system had decided something for me. She called from the road gate. "I just need to see you," she said. "Emma's worried." My daughter. That was the lever. I told her to wait. I told her to turn around. She laughed softly. "You've been alone too long," she said. "You need to remember what's real." I watched her headlights crest the final bend. The lights appeared immediately. They did not surround her. They aligned with her. Like escort vehicles, I ran down the tower stairs for the first time since December. Every step felt like tearing something loose inside my chest. Rule 3 shattered under my boots. She stepped out of the car smiling. I grabbed her shoulders. "You cannot turn on your phone," I said. "You cannot use your flashlight. You cannot say my name out loud." She stared at me like I'd lost my mind. "Daniel," she said gently. The lights brightened. I slapped my hand over her mouth. Hard. She pulled away. "What is wrong with you?" she said. The radio activated behind me. "Daddy," it said. Emma's voice. "Perfect. Close." My wife froze. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. I felt something inside me give way. This was the violation I had always known would come. The one the rules couldn't survive. I turned toward the sound. The lights shifted instantly. Closer than ever. Just below the elevation line. Waiting for the last invitation. "That's not her," I said, but my voice broke. "Emma is not here." "Daddy," the voice said again. "It's cold. Can you turn the light on?" My wife sobbed. I dragged her back into the car and shoved her into the passenger seat. "Drive," I said. "Do not stop. Do not look back." The headlights flared. Rule 2 died screaming. The lights surged. Not crossing. Not yet. Something struck the rear of the car. Once. Twice. Like hands. She screamed my name. I slammed the door and ran back toward the tower. Alone. The lights followed me. Not chasing. Accompanying. At the base of the tower, I stopped. I turned. I spoke my daughter's name out loud. Once. The lights froze. That was the limitation asserting itself. Names mattered. But only if you used them right. I began reciting the rules. Every one I knew. Out loud. In order. My voice shook. The lights dimmed. They did not leave. My wife's car made it to the gate. Barely. She never came back. She took Emma and moved east. She does not answer my calls. She believes I chose the job over them. In a way, she's right. After that night, the lights changed behavior permanently. They no longer relied solely on mimicry. They began using witnesses, groups, crowds. April 15th was opening day for limited public access. The overlook filled with people, phones, cameras, children. The lights stayed just out of sight. Below, waiting. I called regional and told them containment had failed. They told me to stop using that word. By April 20th, the lights were visible from the lodge. Guests thought they were reflections. They took pictures. They tagged locations. They shared coordinates. The system did the rest. This is where my authority began to evaporate. No one wanted to hear rules anymore. Rules required inconvenience. And the lights never hurt anyone who stayed inside the lines. At least, not immediately. I returned to the tower every night and logged what I could. But the logs felt smaller now. Insufficient. April ended with a memo stating that anomalous reports would be consolidated under a single environmental explanation to avoid confusion. Avoid confusion. As if confusion hadn't been the only thing keeping people cautious. May was coming, and the lights were no longer confined to winter behavior. They had learned spring. May doesn't arrive all at once at Crater Lake. It leaks in, through reopened trails, through thawed culverts, through people who assume danger recedes when snow does. By May 3rd, the park was operating at partial capacity. Visitor services limited. Trails use at your own risk. Rangers rotated in and out on standard shifts like winter had been an anomaly instead of a containment phase. The lights adapted immediately. They stopped appearing every night. That was the worst change. Absence creates confidence. Confidence creates mistakes. On May 4th, I was instructed to transition Watchtower Delta back to unmanned status within 10 days. Automation was deemed sufficient. I argued. I sent logs, audio clips, thermal stills that showed distortions where nothing physical should have been. Regional responded with a single sentence. Your observations have been noted. That phrase means we are done listening. The tower felt different once that decision had been made. Like a place already abandoned. The walls seemed thinner. Sounds carried farther. I caught myself speaking less, conserving something I didn't know how to replenish. On May 6th, the first non-fatal civilian encounter occurred. A college student named Rachel Bloom. Solo hiker. Ignored closure signs and descended toward the lake via an unofficial path. She reported seeing floating lanterns beneath the tree line. She followed them for approximately 12 minutes. Then they stopped. She stopped. She told the medic she felt like she'd stepped into a place where sound didn't echo correctly. She survived because she panicked. She ran uphill screaming until a trail crew heard her. Panic saved her. That detail was omitted from the report. By May 8th, the lights began exploiting weather windows. Fog mornings. Low cloud cover. Dusk when the lake reflects sky colors that blur depth perception. They appeared where the eye wanted to resolve meaning. Not overt. Suggestive. I started tracking not just where the lights appeared, but when they didn't. They avoided weekends. They avoided ranger-led hikes. They appeared midweek. Orphals. Transitional times. They understood staffing patterns. On May 10th, the limitation changed. Or more accurately, it narrowed. The lights could now rise above the old service road boundary, but only when observed by more than one person. Witnesses. That was the adaptation. Alone, they stayed low. Observed collectively, they ascended. Consensus functioned as permission. I reported this immediately. Regional responded 3 days later with a request to clarify methodology. I didn't answer. On May 13th, I was reassigned to data consolidation support. A desk job. That's what they call it when they want you away from the site without acknowledging why. I refused. I stayed in the tower. That night, the radio transmitted a new voice. Not familiar. Not comforting. Administrative. Fire lookout Mercer, it said. You are outside your authorized assignment. I laughed. Out loud. A sharp sound that surprised me. I know, I said. So are you. The transmission paused. Then repeated itself. Word for word. That was the moment I understood something fundamental. It wasn't just learning us. It was learning our systems. Language. Structure. Authority. On May 15th, the first child disappeared in daylight. A boy named Lucas Hernandez, 7 years old, visiting with his grandparents from Sacramento. He wandered 20 yards from a picnic table near Annie Creek. The grandparents looked away for less than a minute. They heard him laugh. Then nothing. Search and rescue mobilized within 20 minutes. Helicopters. Dogs. Thermal sweeps. Nothing. No tracks. No drag marks. No sound. Just absence. The lights that night were white. Very bright. Stationary. Too many to count. They did not respond to our presence. They did not need to. By May 17th, the rules were no longer being enforced consistently. Not because people didn't believe me. Because believing required action. Action required acknowledgment. Acknowledgement required liability. Instead, new language appeared in briefings. Optical illusions. Environmental stress responses. Group hysteria. The lights became a joke. Careful, I heard a seasonal ranger say. Don't let the spooky lamps get you. He laughed. That ranger's name was Ethan Cole. He vanished 2 days later after stepping off trail to relieve himself at dusk. They found his radio near a tree. It was still playing recorded laughter. Looped. On May 19th, my daughter called me. Not the entity. Emma. Her real voice. She asked if the lights were gone. I told her yes. I lied easily. That scared me more than anything else that had happened. On May 21st, the lodge hosted its first full-capacity evening event of the season. A wedding. 200 guests. String lights. Music. I begged them to cancel. They cited permits. I stationed myself at the overlook and watched the lights gather below. They formed a ring. Not around the lake. Around the lodge. I started breaking rules then. Not recklessly. Deliberately. I shut down external lighting zones. I disabled trail beacons. I killed power to decorative fixtures. People complained. The coordinator threatened to call my supervisor. I told her to do it. Darkness fell fast. The lights below pulsed brighter in response. But they did not rise. Not without witnesses. Not without acknowledgment. I ordered everyone inside. I cited weather. I cited wildlife. I cited authority I was about to lose. They complied reluctantly. The wedding ended early. No one died that night. That counted as a success. It was also my last. On May 23rd, I was formally relieved of duty. A team arrived with paperwork and practiced concern. They told me to pack personal items only. Logs would be archived. I asked who would replace me. They said no one. Automation was sufficient. As I descended the tower stairs for the last time, the lights appeared. Midday. Bright. Unapologetic. The team saw them. All three. They froze. One of them whispered my name. That was new. They knew me. Do not say it, I snapped. Do not answer. Do not wave. Do not. One of the lights rose. Just a little. The team lead raised his radio. Control, he said. "We're seeing." The transmission cut. The light ascended fully, crossed the line. The limitation failed, or was bypassed. The lights did not surge. They spread. Not everywhere. Strategically. Trailheads. Roads. Overlooks. Places people pause. Places they look. The team ran. I stayed. Because someone had to log the first day it happened. I recorded every position. Every color. Every response. By nightfall, the park was full of them. Visitors took photos. Shared them. Tagged them. The phrase Crater Lake Lights began trending locally. Regional shut down communications. Declared a temporary closure for environmental assessment. Too late. On May 26th, the first off-site sighting was reported. Fort Klamath. A blue light hovering near the tree line. Then another. Then 3. Same behavior. Same responses. Same voices. The entity was not confined. It never had been. Crater Lake had just been where it practiced. I returned home that night to an empty house. My wife had left a note. "I can't live in your silence anymore." She took Emma. She left no address. That was the last rule violation. Choosing duty over family. The one no training prepares you for. May ended with me unemployed, unofficially warned not to speak publicly, and fully aware that the systems designed to contain this thing had decided denial was cheaper than resistance. The lights no longer needed winter. They no longer needed isolation. They had learned us. And they were moving on. June is when they stop calling it a phenomenon. They call it a feature. By the time I was officially terminated, the phrase seasonal light events had been approved for public-facing language. It tested well. Sounded harmless. Almost charming. Like something you'd plan a vacation around. I was instructed, verbally, never in writing, that discussing internal rules, anomalous fatalities, or unverified interpretations would be considered a breach of federal non-disclosure agreements tied to my employment. They didn't threaten me. They didn't need to. They just reminded me that Emma still existed somewhere out there, under my name. I stopped pushing. That's what systemic failure looks like in its final stage. Not resistance. Compliance through exhaustion. I left Oregon on June 3rd with a duffel bag, my personal copies of the logs, and a silence that felt heavier than the snow ever had. I thought distance might help. I was wrong. The first light I saw outside Crater Lake appeared 2 nights later, hovering just beyond the tree line of a rest stop near Weed, California. White. Stationary. Waiting. I didn't log it. I kept driving. That was my first mistake as a civilian. When you stop logging, you stop noticing patterns. When you stop noticing patterns, you start believing coincidence again. The news cycle picked it up slowly. Social media faster. Strange lights over Oregon parks. Visitors report mysterious glow at Crater Lake. Scientists weigh in. They always weigh in. They said bioluminescence, atmospheric refraction, temperature inversion. They never said adaptive. They never said intelligent. They never said deliberate. By mid-June, similar lights were reported near Mount Hood. Then Rainier. Then Yellowstone. Different elevations. Same behavior. Same restraint. Same exploitation of boundaries. Always near infrastructure. Always near people doing what they believed was safe. The rule sets didn't transfer cleanly. That's another thing no one prepared for. Rules are local. Threats aren't. The entity, or entities, if you prefer to pretend plurality makes it manageable, had limitations. Real ones. We learned them through blood and paperwork and silence. But those limitations were contextual. At Crater Lake, elevation mattered. Elsewhere, it was distance from roads, or proximity to water. or the presence of witnesses. One limitation per site. Always something they couldn't bypass alone. Always something humans could provide without realizing it. I received my first call from a former colleague on June 18th. Miguel's replacement. He didn't say his name. He didn't have to. They're using radios now, he said. Not just voices. Full conversations. Shift handoffs. They asked me to confirm a schedule change that hadn't happened yet. I told him to stop answering. He laughed. The same tired laugh I'd heard in myself months earlier. Daniel, he said, if I don't answer, they escalate. If I do, they stay calm. What would you choose? That's the moral collapse no one wants to acknowledge. Sometimes breaking the rules makes things quieter, safer in the moment, deadlier in the long run. On June 21st, the summer solstice, there were 12 confirmed disappearances across 3 states. They were all listed as unrelated. Hikers, campers, one utility worker checking a substation at dusk. Different circumstances. Same absence. I started writing again then. Not logs. Confessions. I wrote down every rule I could remember. Every variation. Every exception that had cost someone their life. I wrote them the way they were passed to me. In fragments. In warnings. In sentences that didn't explain why, because explaining why gives people something to argue with. Here are the ones that matter now. Do not respond to lights you did not log first. Do not acknowledge lights with your own. Do not leave marked zones at night. Do not follow voices, especially when they know your name. Do not trust systems to warn you. Do not assume daylight means safety. Do not believe retreat means surrender. And this one they never teach officially. If something asks you to confirm who you are, do not answer. Names are not just identifiers. They are permissions. By late June, the lights were being filmed openly. Tourists chased them. Drones followed them. They didn't react, they didn't need to. The footage never captured what mattered. Context. Duration. Pattern. You can't see those in a clip. You need someone who's tired enough to stay. Someone who knows the rules exist because people died learning them. I heard about Sarah Lynn again on June 28th. She'd left the service entirely. Took a job with a utility company in Nevada. She called me once. Just once. They're here too, she said. Different shape. Same voices. She asked me what to do. I told her the truth. There's no stopping it, I said. Only slowing it. Only making it work harder. She was quiet for a long time. Does it ever stop using kids? She asked. No, I said. She hung up. I haven't heard from her since. By July, the language changed again. Light tourism. Natural spectacle. There were merchandise prototypes. Glow-in-the-dark souvenirs. Someone suggested installing viewing platforms. I wish I were making that up. This is what happens when normalization wins. When horror becomes routine. When the absence of immediate consequence is mistaken for safety. The lights don't kill everyone. They don't need to. They just need enough. Enough to be fed. Enough to be learned from. Enough to be practiced on. I still wake up some nights expecting to hear Emma's voice outside my window. I don't sleep with the lights on. I don't sleep in complete darkness either. Balance matters. That's another rule no one writes down. If you're listening to this because you've seen them, really seen them, and something in your chest tightened instead of filling with wonder, pay attention to that. If you're listening because someone you know went missing near a place with rules no one could explain, understand this. It wasn't an accident. And it wasn't your fault. But it will become your responsibility if you ignore the warning signs. The systems meant to contain this are already failing. They are tired. They are underfunded. They're incentivized to deny. What comes next depends on how many people still believe rules are worth following even when they don't make sense. Even when compassion tells you to break them. Especially then. If you see a light where it shouldn't be, do not wave. Do not call out. Do not follow. Do not record yourself approaching it. Turn away. Get distance. Tell someone who sounds exhausted when they listen. Because people like me don't get believed until it's too late. And if a voice uses your name, your real name, in a place it shouldn't know you exist, you run. You don't answer. You don't look back. I survived Crater Lake. But survival isn't victory. It's just the part where you live long enough to warn someone else. And I'm telling you now, as clearly as I can, before the lights finish learning whatever comes next. They are not lost. They are not signaling for help. They are not beautiful. They are patient. And they are already closer than you think.